The community hall smelled like floor polish and fake flowers. I stood on the small stage, holding my certificate for winning the regional science competition. My hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from excitement. I had beaten 30 other students. This was huge. My father sat in the third row, arms crossed, staring at his phone. When they called my name, he didn't even look up. After the ceremony, neighbors surrounded him, congratulating him on having such a smart daughter. He laughed, waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, it's nothing special. Just a small local thing." My stomach dropped. Nothing special? I had worked for 6 months on that project. My best friend Emma squeezed my arm, but I barely felt it. I watched him chat and smile, completely unbothered. That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was something colder, sharper. If only he'd realized what he'd just done. If only he knew that dismissal would be the last one I'd ever accept from him. I walked out of that hall without saying goodbye. My mother called after me, but I kept walking. The certificate crumpled slightly in my grip. I didn't cry. Crying felt too weak for what I was feeling. This was rage, pure and focused. I made a promise to myself right there on the sidewalk, under the streetlights that were just starting to flicker on. I would make him see me. Not just see me, but acknowledge me in a way he couldn't ignore or dismiss. I would force him to recognize what I'd accomplished, and I would do it publicly. No more quiet achievements he could pretend didn't matter. No more awards he could wave away with a smile and a joke. I needed him to feel the weight of what he'd been ignoring. As I reached the corner, I glanced back. He was still in the doorway, laughing with Mr. Peterson from next door, completely unaware. Unaware that he'd just created something dangerous. He'd created my determination. My father wasn't always like this. Or maybe he was. And I just didn't see it when I was younger. He was the neighborhood hero, the man everyone called when they needed help. He fixed cars, gave advice, lent money without asking for it back. People loved him. I loved him too, desperately. When I was 8, I brought home a perfect report card. All A's. My older brother Jackson had gotten 3 B's that same semester, but Dad took us both out for ice cream and talked the whole time about Jackson's soccer game. I remember sitting there with my strawberry cone, melting onto my hand, waiting for him to ask about my grades. He never did. My younger sister Lily was the baby, the one who could do no wrong. Jackson was the athlete, the son. And me? I was just there, somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out what I needed to do to matter. That night, 8-year-old me made a silent resolution. I would work harder, achieve more, until he had no choice but to notice. When I was 12, I won the school spelling bee. I practiced for weeks, memorizing word lists until my eyes burned. The day of the competition, I was nervous but ready. I won. I actually won. I couldn't wait to tell Dad. That evening, I burst through the front door, waving the small trophy. He was watching television, feet up on the coffee table. "Dad, I won. I won the spelling bee." He glanced at the trophy, then back at the screen. "That's nice, sweetheart. Did you finish your chores?" My excitement deflated like a popped balloon. I set the trophy on the kitchen counter. Mom saw it later and made a small fuss, but it felt hollow. The next day at school, my teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, asked if my parents were proud. I lied and said yes. But that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was it the trophy? Too small? Not important enough? I decided next time would be different. Next time, I'd win something he couldn't ignore. Over the next few years, I started keeping a list. Every award, every certificate, every recognition that he brushed off or ignored completely. 8th grade. Honor roll, 4 consecutive semesters. His response: "School's easy when you don't have distractions." 9th grade. 1st place in the county art show. His response: "Art's a nice hobby, but it won't pay bills." 10th grade. Selected for the state debate team. His response, "Debate? You argue enough at home already." The pattern was so clear, I didn't understand how no one else saw it. My friend Emma noticed, though. One day after school, she found me in the library, adding another entry to my list. "Tessa, this isn't healthy," she said gently. "You're obsessing." I looked at her, my jaw tight. "I'm documenting." "Documenting what?" "Proof," I said. "Proof that I exist." She didn't ask again, but I saw the worry in her eyes. I didn't care. I wasn't obsessed. I was building a case. The strange thing was, he praised other people constantly. Mr. Peterson's son got into community college, and Dad threw him a barbecue. Our neighbor's daughter made the JV basketball team, and he bought her new shoes. At family gatherings, he'd brag about cousins I barely knew who got decent grades or landed part-time jobs. But my achievements? Silence. Or worse, dismissal. I started watching him more carefully. At my aunt's birthday party, I saw him in the corner with Uncle Ray, speaking in low tones. They kept glancing around the room at different family members. When I walked past, they stopped talking immediately. "Hey, Tessa," Uncle Ray said too cheerfully. "Heard you won some science thing." "Regional competition," I corrected. "First place." Dad sipped his drink. "She got lucky with an easy category." My hands clenched at my sides. Uncle Ray looked uncomfortable but said nothing. As I walked away, I heard them resume their conversation. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was calculating. What were they planning? Then something unexpected happened. I was 16 and I'd just passed my driver's test on the first try. It wasn't a huge achievement, but I was proud. That evening, Dad actually congratulated me. "Good job, Tessa. I'm proud of you." I froze. Had I heard him correctly? Really? Of course. Passing on the first try shows responsibility. My heart soared. This was it. This was the breakthrough I'd been waiting for. Maybe he'd been waiting for me to mature, to accomplish adult things. Maybe now everything would change. I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. For the next 10 minutes, I floated on air. Then Jackson came home from football practice. Dad immediately turned all his attention to him, asking about the game, about his stats, about his college recruitment. I stood there, still holding my temporary license. Invisible again. The pride I'd felt shattered into sharp, painful pieces. That night, I realized something important. The brief acknowledgement hadn't been real. It was a pattern interrupt, a moment of distraction before returning to his default setting. Ignoring me. I started noticing he did this to others too. My cousin Brianna graduated nursing school, a huge accomplishment. At the family dinner celebrating her, Dad spent 5 minutes congratulating her, then the rest of the evening telling stories about his own life, steering every conversation back to himself. When Aunt Stephanie tried to share Brianna's job offer details, he interrupted with advice nobody asked for. It wasn't about Brianna anymore. It was about him dispensing wisdom, being the center. I saw the disappointment in Brianna's eyes. She'd wanted her moment, and he'd taken it. That's when I understood. This wasn't personal to me. This was about control. He needed to be the most important person in every room, the one whose accomplishments and opinions mattered most. By acknowledging others too much, he risked losing that position. So he minimized us, kept us small. One evening, a plain envelope appeared under my bedroom door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sentence written in unfamiliar handwriting. "You're not the only one who sees it." My pulse quickened. Who had sent this? The answer came 2 days later. Mrs. Chen, my old piano teacher, stopped me after school. She was ancient, probably in her 80s, but her eyes were sharp. "Tessa, walk with me." We sat on a bench outside the music building. "Your father is a complicated man," she began. I tensed, ready to defend or deflect. "He loves you," she continued. But he's afraid. Afraid of what? Of being outshone, of losing his position as the family's star. She explained that she'd known my father since he was young. He'd grown up as the golden child in his family, praised constantly. When his siblings achieved things, his parents diminished those achievements to keep him elevated. He learned that love and attention are finite resources, Mrs. Chen said. He thinks acknowledging you fully means losing something himself. So what do I do? Public recognition, she said firmly. Make it impossible for him to ignore or reframe. Force the moment where he must choose between his pride and his love. She patted my hand. But be careful. Wounded pride makes people dangerous. I spent the next month gathering everything. Every certificate from elementary school forward. Every newspaper clipping mentioning my name. Every email from teachers praising my work. Every award, ribbon, and letter of recognition. I organized them chronologically in a large binder, creating an undeniable timeline of achievement. Emma helped me scan documents and create backups. What's your endgame? She asked. I'm going to show him everything he's ignored. Publicly. Where he can't dismiss it. Tessa, that's nuclear. Good. While scanning an old certificate, I found something unexpected. A letter from the principal to my parents from 5th grade, recommending me for the gifted program. I'd never been enrolled in that program. I confronted Mom. She looked uncomfortable. Your father thought it would make you arrogant, she admitted quietly. He said you needed to stay humble. My hands shook. He hadn't just ignored my achievements. He'd actively blocked opportunities. This wasn't neglect. It was sabotage. The binder was no longer just evidence. It was a weapon. Dad started noticing my confidence growing. At dinner one night, he studied me across the table. You've been awfully quiet lately, Tessa. Everything okay? Everything's fine. No new competitions or awards I should know about? The question felt like a trap. Would you care if there were? His eyes narrowed. That's disrespectful. I'm just asking. I've always supported you, he said, his voice taking on that reasonable tone he used when he wanted witnesses. Haven't I, Eleanor? Mom nodded hesitantly. Jackson and Lily kept eating, eyes down. I've been to your events, he continued. I've celebrated your successes. If you're feeling neglected, that's a you problem, not a me problem. I said nothing, just nodded. But as I cleared the dishes, he caught my arm. Whatever you're planning, he said quietly. Remember who's head of this household. Public embarrassment cuts both ways. It wasn't a question. He knew. Somehow he knew. But instead of scaring me, it made me more determined. The frustrating thing was how beloved he was. When I tried talking to Aunt Stephanie about his dismissiveness, she laughed. Oh, Tessa, your dad's just old-fashioned. He shows love differently. Uncle Ray said, He's proud of you, kiddo. He just doesn't gush like some parents. Even my guidance counselor, when I mentioned feeling unsupported at home, said, Your father has always been so engaged when I've met with him. He clearly cares deeply. Nobody believed me. They saw his public face, helpful, generous, charming. They didn't see the private moments, the small cuts, the calculated dismissals. It made me feel crazy, like I was inventing problems. But I had evidence now. I wasn't imagining it. Then Emma showed me a flyer. The community center was hosting a youth achievement night in 2 months, honoring outstanding students. Local businesses would sponsor it. Parents would be invited. The mayor would speak. It was perfect. Public, prestigious, impossible to ignore. I submitted my application immediately. This would be the moment. This would be when everything changed. I prepared like I was training for battle. I wrote and rewrote my speech, practicing in front of the mirror until every word sounded natural. I coordinated with Emma and Mrs. Chen, who agreed to attend as support. I even reached out to former teachers, asking them to write brief testimonials I could reference. The selection committee called 2 weeks before the event. I'd been chosen as one of 5 students to be honored. My category: academic excellence and scientific achievement. They wanted my family there. They'd specifically mentioned wanting to recognize the parents. Perfect, I told Mom first. She was thrilled, crying and hugging me. Your father will be so proud. I didn't correct her. When I told Dad, he was reading the newspaper. That's nice, he said without looking up. We'll try to make it if nothing else comes up. The invitation says you're being recognized too, as my parent. That got his attention. He loved public recognition, even secondhand. Well, I suppose we should attend then. That night, I saw him on the phone, speaking quietly. When I passed his office, I heard my name. He was talking to someone about the event. Planning something? I couldn't tell. But his tone was calculating. He knew this was bigger than my previous achievements, and he was preparing his own strategy. I decided to test the waters. There was a small community meeting about school funding where several parents, including mine, would be present. I arranged to give a brief presentation about student achievement programs. It was a practice run for my bigger moment. I stood at the front of the room, presented my ideas clearly, referenced data and research. I was good. I knew I was good. When I finished, the room applauded politely. Then my father stood. I appreciate my daughter's enthusiasm, he said with a condescending smile. But I think we need to hear from people with real-world experience, not just academic theory. The room shifted uncomfortably. He'd dismissed me publicly, smoothly, making it seem like parental guidance rather than rejection. I sat down, face burning. But then I noticed something. His hand, resting on the chair back, was trembling slightly. His smile was a fraction too wide. He was performing confidence, but underneath he was rattled. He'd felt threatened by my presentation. Mrs. Chen caught my eye from the back row and nodded slightly. She'd seen it too. He wasn't as unshakable as he pretended. There were cracks in the armor. That night, I dreamed I was on a stage in an empty auditorium. My father sat in the front row, but he was enormous, his head touching the ceiling. I tried to speak, to show him my awards. But my voice made no sound. He laughed, and the sound echoed until it filled everything. I woke up gasping, heart pounding. It was still dark outside. I lay there analyzing the dream. It was about his size, his presence. He made himself big by making others small. The only way to break that pattern was to refuse to shrink. I got out of bed and went to my desk. The binder of achievements sat there, moonlight catching its edge. I opened it and began reviewing everything again, reinforcing my resolve. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. Tucked into the back pocket was an old photograph. Me at age 6, holding a handmade trophy from a kindergarten reading competition. Dad was in the photo too, smiling, holding me up. He'd been proud once. What had changed? When had I become a threat instead of a daughter? My sister Lily knocked on my door the next morning. She was 14, usually lost in her own world. But today she looked nervous. Can I talk to you? We sat on my bed. I heard Dad on the phone last night, she said. He was talking about your achievement night thing. What did he say? He was asking someone how to, handle it. He said he needed to maintain control of the narrative. She looked at me with worried eyes. Tessa, why does he hate that you're good at stuff? He doesn't hate it. He just can't handle not being the center of attention. That's stupid. I laughed despite everything. Yeah, it is. Lily hesitated, then said, I think what you're doing is brave. The achievement night. Making him see you. You know about that? I pay attention more than people think. She squeezed my hand. If you need someone to back you up there, to say something, I will. My throat tightened. Thank you, Lily. She left, but her offer meant everything. I wasn't alone in this. Even in our family, someone saw the truth. The week before the achievement night, something unexpected happened. The local newspaper ran a small feature on the 5 honorees. My photo was included, along with a quote from my principal calling me one of the most dedicated students we've had in years. When I got home, Mom had cut out the article and put it on the refrigerator. For once, she hadn't asked Dad's permission. That evening, Mr. Peterson stopped Dad in the driveway. I watched from the window as they talked. Mr. Peterson pointed to our house, clearly mentioning the article. Dad nodded, smiled, said something that made them both laugh. When he came inside, he actually said, "Good article, Tessa. Your principal thinks highly of you." It was brief, almost grudging, but it was something. For a moment, I felt hope flicker. Maybe this was the beginning of real change. But then Aunt Stephanie called, and he spent 20 minutes telling her how he'd encouraged my academics, how he'd always known I had potential, how proud he was. All lies. Not lies exactly, but a rewriting of history that erased every dismissal, every ignored achievement. The hope died. One compliment didn't undo years of neglect. Mrs. Chen invited me for tea. Her tiny apartment smelled like jasmine and old books. "You're close now," she said, pouring carefully. "Close to what?" "To understanding the real motivation." She explained that my father grew up with a father who pitted his children against each other. Love was conditional, based on achievement and status. He learned that acknowledgement is power, Mrs. Chen said. Whoever controls recognition controls the family hierarchy. By keeping you small, he maintains his position as the family's greatest success. But I'm his daughter. Shouldn't my success make him happy? It should, but he confuses his identity with his status. Your achievements threaten his sense of self. She leaned forward. "The public confrontation you're planning? It will work, but understand what you're doing. You're not just demanding recognition. You're dismantling his control system. He will resist and others will be uncomfortable. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the binder, the speech, the years of being invisible. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." She nodded. "Then trust yourself. The truth is a powerful thing." The countdown began. 5 days until the achievement night. I confirmed details with the event coordinator. The program would include speeches from each honoree, followed by recognition of families. Media would be present. Local sponsors would attend. This was bigger than I'd initially realized. 4 days out, Dad started being suspiciously nice. He asked about school. He commented positively on dinner. He even offered to help Jackson with homework, which he never did. Mom seemed pleased, thinking he was finally stepping up. I knew better. He was performing, setting up a narrative where he'd been supportive all along. 3 days out, I rehearsed my speech one final time. Emma listened, then said, "It's perfect. It's honest without being cruel, factual without being bitter. He won't be able to counter it." 2 days out, I barely slept. Doubt crept in. What if this backfired? What if I looked like the ungrateful daughter? 1 day out, I saw Dad in his office, practicing his own speech. He was preparing remarks, probably about parental sacrifice and guidance. He was planning to co-opt the moment, to make it about him. That sealed it. Tomorrow, everything would change. The day of the event was unseasonably warm. I dressed carefully in a navy dress Mom had bought for the occasion. I looked older than 17, more confident. Dad wore a suit. He was in a good mood, joking with Jackson, complimenting Lily's outfit. At breakfast, he looked at me and smiled. "Big day, Tessa. Ready to make us proud?" The question was loaded. Make us proud, not make yourself proud. As if my achievement was really about them. "I'm ready," I said. The drive to the community center was quiet. Dad hummed along to the radio. Mom chattered nervously about who might attend. Lily caught my eye in the rearview mirror and gave a small nod of support. The parking lot was fuller than I expected. The event had drawn a real crowd. As we walked toward the entrance, Dad put his hand on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it looked supportive, paternal, but his grip was just slightly too tight. "Remember," he said quietly, "family first. Don't say anything that might embarrass us." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice. Inside, the community center buzzed with energy. My father's mask of calm was perfect. He showed no signs of worry. But I knew him now. I could see the calculation behind his eyes. The program began. The mayor spoke about youth potential and community investment. Local sponsors were recognized. Then it was time for the honorees. I was fourth in line. I watched the first 3 students give their speeches. They were good, humble, thanking parents and teachers. Standard and safe. My hands were sweating. Then my name was called. I stood, my legs somehow carrying me to the podium. The crowd applauded. I saw my family in the 3rd row. Dad was already positioning himself for attention, nodding at people around him. The proud father. I looked at my notes, took a breath. "Thank you for this honor," I began. "Achievement doesn't happen in isolation." I went off script. For years, I've worked hard, not because I loved the work, though I did, but because I wanted to be seen. I wanted someone specific to see me. The room got quieter. People sensed something unusual coming. I saw Dad shift in his seat, his smile freezing. Today, I want to acknowledge not just my achievements, but the journey of fighting to have them recognized. My father's face went pale. The audience leaned forward, sensing drama. I opened my binder. "In 5th grade," I said, my voice steady, "I was recommended for the gifted program. That opportunity was denied, not because I wasn't qualified, but because someone thought it would make me arrogant." I showed the letter, held it up for the room to see. Whispers rippled through the audience. Dad started to stand, but Uncle Ray, sitting next to him, put a hand on his arm. In 8th grade, I made honor roll for 4 consecutive semesters. I was told that school was easy when you didn't have distractions, as if effort and intelligence didn't matter. More whispers. Mom's face showed confusion, then dawning realization. In 10th grade, I placed first in the regional science competition, the same achievement being honored here tonight. I was told it was just a small local thing, nothing special. I made eye contact with my father. He looked trapped, his usual confidence shattered. "I'm not sharing this for pity," I continued. "I'm sharing this because silence protects dysfunction. I've learned that some people need others to stay small so they can feel big." The room was dead silent now. My voice didn't shake. "But I'm done being small. I have a timeline here," I said, flipping through the binder, "of every achievement, every award, every recognition that was dismissed, ignored, or minimized over 12 years. I pulled out specific examples, reading them quickly. With each one, I saw Dad shrinking, his face reddening. People around him looked uncomfortable, pieces clicking together. Then came the final reveal. 2 weeks ago, I found this. I held up the letter blocking my gifted program enrollment. Signed by my father, stating that he believed accelerated programs would be detrimental to my character development. The room gasped. Mom covered her mouth. "This isn't about one moment or one dismissal," I said. "It's about a pattern of control masked as parenting. It's about someone so afraid of being outshone that they dim the lights around them." I looked directly at Dad. I spent years thinking I wasn't good enough, that I needed to achieve more, be better, work harder. But the problem was never me. The problem was that my success threatened someone who confused their identity with their status. Dad tried to speak, but no words came. His credibility was collapsing in real time. The mayor looked shocked. Mrs. Chen in the back had tears in her eyes. The moderator tried to regain control of the program, but the damage was done. Several people approached my father, their expressions ranging from shock to disappointment. He tried to deflect, to explain, but every word made it worse. Mr. Peterson, his longtime friend, just shook his head and walked away. After the formal program ended, the event coordinator asked to speak with me. "That took courage," she said. "Real courage. Your father's behavior, if what you've described is accurate, is troubling." "It's all documented," I said, showing her the binder. She flipped through it, her expression darkening. "I'm going to recommend counseling resources for your family. This kind of dynamic is harmful to everyone involved." When I returned to the main room, Dad was sitting alone. Mom and my siblings were talking quietly in the corner. He looked up when I approached. For the first time in my life, he looked small. "Why would you do that?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Because you left me no choice," I said. "I tried private conversations. I tried excelling. I tried everything. You taught me that the only way to make you see me was to force the moment." He had no response. The threats, the control, they were gone now, stripped away in front of everyone. The drive home was silent. At the house, Dad went straight to his office and closed the door. Mom pulled me aside. "Tessa, I had no idea it was that bad. I thought he was just tough on you, pushing you to be better." "It wasn't pushing, Mom. It was erasing." She hugged me, apologizing through tears. Lily and Jackson both sought me out later, separately, thanking me for saying what they'd felt but couldn't articulate. 2 days later, Dad finally spoke to me. "I'm sorry," he said. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. "I'm going to therapy. Your mother insists. Maybe I need to understand why I did this." It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. Weeks later, at a family dinner, he publicly acknowledged my achievements. It felt performative at first, but I saw something different in his eyes. Shame, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding. I realized then that I'd never needed his recognition to validate my worth. The fight had been about refusing to be invisible. About standing up even when it was terrifying. If only I had known how strong I truly was, I wouldn't have waited so long. But maybe the waiting taught me something important. That true recognition comes from within, and the only approval I needed was my own.